Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, everybody from where you are. Happy Black History Month from my company, Agile Evolutionary Group, as well as anyone that is or has been supporting AEG in this endeavor. My name is Dr. Michael Connor, and I am the CEO and founder of the Agile Evolutionary Group Corporation, but more importantly, the host for Voices for Excellence. This is an episode in our Black Excellence series, and I am glad to have my brother on. Yes, from the left coast, as we say, the West Coast, right? New York to California. Look, brother Clark, I'll tell you this, we might be over 3,200 miles away, but we share the same intensity about education. So I'm glad to have Dr. Adam Clark be a part of the Black Excellence series for Voices for Excellence, because he is an unapologetic leader, but more importantly, he is a leader that is steadfast, not for just equity, but for excellence and justice. And Dr. Clark, I mean, he is a renowned superintendent, not just in California, but across the country. Just to let you know, Dr. Clark just was announced as the 2022 Superintendent of the Year for the Association of California School Administrators. Yes, the superintendents in California elected him or voted him in as the best superintendent or the superintendent of the year to represent them at the AASA National Conference for the National Superintendent of the Year. And also, Dr. Clark is the incoming California Association of African American Superintendents and Administrators Association. So that is the CAAASA. Yes, that's a tongue twister for a lot of people, but not for us, because that is a strong association really supporting Black administrators, more importantly, administrators and Black leaders of color, or Black leaders and leaders of color in California. But more importantly, he is the superintendent of Mount Diablo Unified School District in California. So I would like to welcome you, Black Excellence itself, Dr. Adam Clark. Dr. Clark, welcome.
Dr. Connor, it's so good to have this time with you and this space for us just to, talk about what's going on here in education and in the world. But before I start, I do just have to make a slight correction that I was the superintendent of Region 6, which is the San Francisco Bay Area.
Okay. Okay, Region 6. Listen, brother, Region 6, state of California, or Region 1000. Yes, recognition from your peers, brother. Yes, I'm so happy for you. Happy to be on here, because here I wanted to find a leader, right, that emulates my unapologeticness within education. And Dr. Clark, he is a leader's leader. And what I mean by that is, he ensures that he is leading for the right causes. So, it is such an honor to actually have Dr. Clark. But one thing I failed to mention is that, as he takes over this president-elect role within the CAAASA, he is also an active participant and member of our brown brothers and sisters at CALSA. So I failed to forget that he is actively involved with them, because there's intentionality where Black and brown leadership really have to join together. And Dr. Clark, you exemplify that on a daily basis. So again, thank you for being on the Black Excellence series of Voices for Excellence.
Absolutely. And yes, and working with CALSA has been great. They're doing some great things in the state of California, and our missions are the same. And just as we continue to unite, we've also brought in CAPEL, which which taps into our our Asian and Pacific Islander brothers and sisters, and we're all working in the same direction, working on the same things. And as you well know, it's greater when you have allies and teams to go forward to do this extremely important, critical, difficult work. And more hands makes the heavy lift a little lighter.
California is leading this work in this. So let's get right into this, because man, I look to you, I'm not going to lie, to get my boldness, where I got to get my unapologetic approach is you, because I've seen you at some of the meetings, some of our presentations. I just want to just get up and run through a wall for you. But before we go to that, Dr. Clark, And I couldn't wait to ask you this question because Dr. Tracy Davis, always give her credit for this. I took this right out of her Rolodex with this question, right? And we know Dr. Tracy Davis, she's one of those extraordinary Black leaders, Black excellence on a daily basis. But together, you and I, we participate on panels together, right?
Yeah.
You know, we attended some of these high-level think tank sessions where, you know, we ready to throw pins across the room for equity and equity, right? In these various spaces. But Dr. Clark, when people see you, right, as the superintendent of Mount Diablo Unified School District, your constituents, your stakeholders, your broader business partnerships, university partnerships, what equity song comes to mind when you walk in the room and get ready to sit down to start that meeting?
You know, I loved seeing this question, and I thought about this, but it came up to me right away, and it was something that was sort of crowned on me when I was a young teacher. But those values and you know, and stances that I took back then are still with me today. And the song would have to be "Lean on Me." and let me tell you why. Is because, you know, as you well know, the great movie of the great leader Joe Clark.
Yes.
I am a Clark.
Yes,
My father's name is Joel Clark, and my father was an educator and continuation school educator, and I remember the second and fifth graders at the school in South Richmond, California, where I started teaching at, you know, would go down the hall and they would chant, you know, free Mr. Clark, free Mr. Clark. And so the movie what was made for me is that, you know, just I'm an activist. I'm born and raised in Berkeley, California. You know, born in 1968 during the, you know, so much was going on in our country and in our culture at that time, and just had parents who were just immersed in the struggle. And so from day one, like that has been my DNA, is what's right, doing what's right for all people, and working together to do that. So when you watch that movie, Lean on Me, and think of that song, then that's definitely what the people here at Mount Diablo think when I come into the room and I start talking and I start advocating for our young people. You know, Joe Clark, that's what it is.
Oh man, I mean, Adam, right? So I can't look at that movie no more the same way, right? Because you know what? I never had that association until now with Joe Clark and Adam Clark. And yes, they are two of a kind when you know Dr. Adam Clark. But what do you know about Joe Clark and what do you know about Adam Clark? They get outcomes.
Yeah, absolutely. And student centered. I mean, that's really,
yes.
You know, I never had a bullhorn or a baseball bat, but I mean, the message was the exact same. And it was, you know, we have to do right by the system so that it can help each and every one of our kids. And who are our most marginalized kids? Who are our kids who, you know, who the system has, you know, really, you know, not supported along the way, is, you know, Black and brown students and students from lower socioeconomic areas. And so they definitely need someone to champion and need someone to support them and lead the way.
Absolutely. And this segues right into our second question, Dr. Clark. And to me, as well as a lot of people that follow your work, I mean, the affinity work, like when I think of what you're doing specifically in Mount Diablo, even in your previous capacity, but you're considered a strategic disruptor, right, from California. A lot of people, because the Bay Area is known as the hub of innovation, right? And let's be honest, right, Dr. Clark, yes, you have that approach to it, but it's strategic and you ground that level of innovation at every level of the system. So by definition, right, I'm going to say you are my book, Intentional, Bold, and Unapologetic, with no exceptions to it, but to prescribe to an aggressive, right? And I want to use that word aggressive lightly because it's strategic, but accelerates the practices and capacity. This is your empowerment approach that you do with your leadership team, which I love, and we're going to get to that. But when we talk about this in continuous improvement cycle, right, that challenges the normalization beyond California, that's kind of scary to people. Now we moved into this AC stage of education, right? But how do you prepare? I want my my listeners, right? I want the people that are going to engage in this, because I think it's really intentional on how they pick up on key strategies from you, right? Context does matter, but strategies can be adapted to context. But how do you prepare to be bold and unapologetic when the status quo does not want to be challenged?
Right. So I really lean back and depend on my experiences and just briefly, I've had the opportunity and the great fortune to work in some of the most impoverished districts and cities and some of the most wealthiest districts and cities. And in those, I have really identified the commonalities that you see in both both systems. And what I have found, and really what I build all of my philosophy on, is that in all of those experiences, I mean, I've been an elementary principal, middle school principal, high school principal, student services, ed services, you name it. In all those experiences, the kids are the ones who need the going through school and and going through the changes that a middle schooler goes through, or the uncertainty of high school, or those developmental years in kindergarten, elementary school. Like our kids come to school, no matter what background they come from, they come with their cup needing to be filled with the positivity and the excellence that adult educators have to give them. And oftentimes, we as the adults in all of these systems, we struggle to adequately connect with our students and get out of our own way when it comes to past practices, past assumptions, how school was for us. And so as I go forward, I really always have to kind of fall back on those experiences and remember that what's good for one really can be good for all. And what that good for is high quality first instruction and that personal connection. I mean, and that is really what's at the base of all the initiatives that are out there, the base of any sort of program or any sort of turnaround or enrichment programs. It's really being excellent in instructional leaders, and that's at every level. It is all about the instruction and the academic achievement. But how do we get our students to buy into that? I mean, you could have students who are getting straight A's and who are acing the standardized tests and things of that nature, but can they think and apply those skills that they have? Can they be empathetic? Can they be innovative? Right? I mean, a lot of students just get really, really skilled at kind of just repeating what you kind of give them, right? So that's not innovating. Just being able to read a book and being able to recite what's said in the book or whatever, you're not going to innovate in that way. And so really, how can we make sure that instruction is top notch and that it really is meeting the needs of those students, to not only get them to meet the standards, but to put them in a place where they can apply those skills that they learn into real world situations, but then also be effective on the pencil and paper tasks that we so often put in front of them.
Absolutely. And high quality instruction, right? The impact, efficacy of pedagogy. And you highlighted it, which I'm looking at it right now, just referencing my notes, instructional leadership, right? And we're going to touch upon that because I want our listeners to know the actual approach you did to build instructional leadership with your administrators, but it's more of this tightly, loosely coupled approach of building capacity, which I thought was fascinating. We're going to get to that, but you talked about now, right? And I think that there's this challenge around, it's not just rote skills, right? It's not these rudimentary levels of articulation of information to a test in order to get into a Harvard or a Yale or Amherst or a Stanford or a Cal Berkeley, right? But we need to develop individuals that are competent, right, within these skill articulations. And you referenced this report that came out during COVID from McKinsey, and it was around Delta 2030, right? And they identified the Delta competencies, Delta meaning distinct elements of talent, right? So it's that transition to competencies. And you highlighted, two critical domains that are completely obsolete now more than ever, that should be embedded within curriculum, pedagogy, systems change, or change management, continuous improvement, however you want to contextualize it, is that it needs to be self-leadership of what you were just talking about, right? And then also adding this digital component. And that's why there needs to be intentional shift around what instructional leadership should look like in the AC stage of education. You captured it. And high quality instruction and instructional leadership, Dr. Clark. Please expand on that, because I really want our listeners to really dive deep into that comment.
Yeah,
All those two things.
So I want to give an example. So when I was principal of one of the highest performing public high schools in California, I came up with the bold idea that we were going to core our freshman English and social studies classes, and we were going to give each of these students an iPad. Now, mind you, this was back in 2010, right? And
scaring people. You're scaring people, Dr. Clark.
and so we did. We purchased the iPads and we gave one to each kid. But the interesting part about it was the reaction to that. The first thing that came up was, what filters are we going to put on it? And this came from parents, the educators, like that's the first thing they wanted to do. And we said, we're not going to filter it, right? We're not going to filter it. But what we are going to do is we're going to start teaching students about digital citizenship and really teaching them about the what online bullying is and what is appropriate to use as school device to use. And so it was met by resistance, right? Just as most things in the educational world is. Yeah. But then the angle that we had to start doing, once we started getting these devices in the hands of kids and let the teachers know that it's okay to let the kids explore and to create, the students over time started to use that device to create. It wasn't just to, download a PDF on it, a fillable PDF that they could do their assignments on or anything like that. But they were making movies, they were recording stuff, they had pictures on there that, it was incredible. And again, this was back in 2010. Now, of course, as we were trying to roll this out, we were naive, thinking they could have their textbooks loaded on that. And once we realized the cost of doing all that, that kind of went out.
But that was 2010. That was 2010, though.
Right. This was 2010. This was a while ago. This was,
it's not 13, now.
13, 14. Yes, 13, 14 years ago. But it really just shows our attitude in education of using tools the proper way to be able to integrate that instruction and those high expectations and all that organizational stuff that we use so highly in schools. But how can a tool inspire and engage kids to be able to to be able to demonstrate what they could create and what they could do? Now, of course, right, when you're looking at grading practices, when you're looking at things like that, like all of that had to be talked about and revamped. But so that is something that I've tried to use throughout my leadership in this position. So, for example, making sure that principals understand that they are, I'm not going to say 100%, but maybe they're 95% in charge of their schools, right? Yeah, we all have to answer to someone, and we're all held accountable. But at your school, you are in control. It's not the parents, it's not the union, it's not the students, it's not the teacher. It is you as the instructional leader of that school. You're not a manager, you're a leader. So how can you ensure that at your school that you're putting instruction first, you're putting student achievement first, you're putting making sure that students feel welcome and students feel supported? That's in the hands of the principal. Now, not all principals can just pull up in the morning and do that. That takes a considerable amount of modeling, support, revisiting missions and goals and consistency, coherence. All those things are tailored into that. But to get the principal to have the mindset that I'm in charge of this school, Now, the last point I want to make is then taking that same thought and now putting that down to the teacher, right? Teacher,
Yes.
you are in charge of this class. These kids, the outcomes that these students experience or achieve are directly related to you, right? It's not that, again, it's not any outside situations. They are in your classroom, and you have the ability to really impact each and every one of these kids. That's the mindset. Now, the practice of that and making sure that that happens in every class, like, again, that's where all the work happens. But that's the mindset of that instructional leadership.
Absolutely, brother. And that's the thing, right? That I
Yeah.
think that when we talk about the problems of practice, right, within an organization, and what is the one main reason that a lot of, or you see this disjunction between a really good strategic approach around change management and then the actual implementation and execution. And one thing is around capacity, right? Michael Fullen articulates it perfectly in his work with regards to how important and essential it is to be able to build specific social capital, right? And to build individual human capital through the capacity of your change process. And that's what you've done so well, right? But before we get to the work of Mount Diablo, I want to talk about, you're an award-winning superintendent. I'm going to highlight you, brother. Anytime, one of my brothers wins superintendent of the year, you won it, this past year. A mutual friend of ours from Evanston, Dr. Devon Horton, got the NAPSI National Superintendent of the Year. So it was a good year for us. It was a good year for us. Good year to see, some superintendents get new jobs, making moves. Also when we talk about, Black Excellence, Dr. Barbara Mullen, who just became superintendent of Rush Henrietta in New York. That's good. One of our sisters, getting jobs. But, what are you doing out there, with the CAASA, with regards to, our brothers and sisters, you becoming president-elect, and then also what's going on out there with the Association with California School Administrators? I know you're not, you didn't win their award, but obviously being a part of that, where, just a few weeks ago, I believe you were in Monterey for the superintendent's conference. So please just elaborate what's going on in the state.
Yeah. So first of all, CASA, the California Association of African American Superintendents and Administrators. So they're an organization that's been prevalent in California and is actually nationally known for the work that we're doing. And first of all, we're an organization that really supports African American superintendents, and making sure that they have a network and they have the support systems to not only get the positions, but then also to stay in the positions. Several years ago, it was expanded out to all administrators. So we do various activities, where we're preparing administrators to go after those superintendent roles. And so we do that through our professional development. We do that through our different trainings. We do that through mentoring and coaching, interview prep, all of those types of things. However, we're doing that so that we can ensure that Black and brown and under-marginalized students have competent leaders who can lead them and who can ensure that they're going to be successful. So we do an annual conference. At that conference, we bring in Linda Darling Hammond. She's one of our regulars. She's she's the California State Board of Education president. She's also has a long tenure working at Stanford. She brings in young African American researchers who come to our conference and share their research. So we give them a space to share the latest and greatest research on on ways to support African American students. We also do, we're highly committed to current times. And so as we've been dealing with the pandemic the last couple of years, we've made a huge commitment to the health of our communities, of underserved communities. So whether it's doing vaccine drives, whether it's putting together a handbook for educators and for parents to be able to go through that handbook and to see how they can help their students get through the challenges and trials and tribulations of the pandemic, and to partner with their schools and partner with local organizations so that they can get the health and wellness that they need so that they can be with us as many of our communities were struggling. We also do partnerships with the California Department of Ed, with the Attorney General's office. We had a weekend conference, and we had the Attorney General of California at our conference speaking to us. We asked him questions about school resource officers, about all kinds of stuff, really engaging in that dialogue. And then the last thing we do is advocacy. We have partnerships throughout the state. We have partnerships with NAPSI. We took a trip out to Washington, D.C. for the Black Congressional Caucus, met with Congressman Scott, things like that we're just doing just to find ways to support, African-American superintendents and administrators. There's 1,100 school districts in California. There's approximately 33, 35 African-American superintendents.
Wow.
So you look at those numbers, it's disproportionate to the number of African-American students in California. And so again, we're just working to increase those numbers and to making sure that our members not only obtain these jobs, but that they are successful in them, and ultimately that they're successful in supporting the students in which they serve.
Dr. Clark, I marveled at the stuff that you're doing out there, and just for you to be president-elect, that is such an honor, because I'm glad you were able to elaborate on the work of the CEAASA, because the work that you're doing, underscoring support. More importantly, when I heard about that partnership where you have Black researchers coming in and sharing their work, I'm like, that's just Adam Clark right there. I was like, when I heard that, I was like, that is Adam, but that is that group. And that the key word you said is advocacy, right? Not just getting them in the positions, but having them be successful in the positions.
Yeah, well, I want you just to think back. I mean, I was a principal, and I was at these conferences just as a member, sitting in the room with Linda Darling Hammond and a team of her researchers, hearing the latest research on the national level from Stanford University, and I'm a principal, and I'm in there getting fired up. And then I'm going to a next session, and I'm sitting there with a whole panel of superintendents, and they're sharing with me, with others in the room as well. They're sharing with me, strategies and, all things about search firms and things of that nature. And I was able to experience that coming up. So this is just one of the many organizations that I'm involved with, but this is how it came about. Lastly, 2 weeks ago, we had a free session down in Burbank, California. And in California, there's three main superintendent search firms.
Yep.
We had representatives from all three of those search firms in a room with it was free. Anyone could come who signed up. All you had to do was sign up and come. And we spent an entire morning talking strategies, talking current events. We had members from the search firms talking to folks and giving them those nuggets about the process of going about in this field.
Amazing. I mean, that's just amazing work. Please keep that up. I mean, I know that there's other, verticals and threads within the organization, but, your steadfast work to advocacy, I think encompasses all of the thread work that you guys are doing there. So great job. Shout out there. But going now down to your critical work, right? And this is about kids, right?
Yeah.
And obviously we want to have the sustainability with our leadership. Obviously we want to build programs to make sure we're getting the leaders in, but now this goes down to your critical work, and what a lot of people admire you about is your work that you're doing now. But I want to focus on, what that whole instructional leadership piece, because you said something specifically, high quality instruction and instructional leadership, right? But you have this organizational structure that I just absolutely love. Right. And I heard you speak about it several times, because people come to you and ask you, what does this look like from a context of science? But more importantly, how you lead. What does this look like from the context of art? Right. So empowering leaders to be leaders. Right. You have that measured approach of what we have or call in the transformation world defined autonomy. Right. This polarity of and between loosely coupled and tightly coupled. I know I'm getting into the language real quick, really technical, and you're going to put it to them in a simpler form. But more importantly, you always ask your leaders to innovate with equity in mind. That is amazing, amazing, right? So there's an obvious strategy that you built with this, yes, with the defined autonomy approach, but the art to elicit innovation and equity, which is around this aspect of innovate, right? That's kind of like that Silicon Valley, Stanford design thinking approach to this, taking a traditional approach of leadership and now adding those elements with flexibility. How did you design this business model? That takes years and it takes risk, and your board had to believe in you to do this. That is a lot to do over time, but you accomplished this. Now we're in the AC stage of education, first typical year since 1819. Now we have to apply practices, progressive practices like that, right? How did you do it, and how do we encompass that in the AC stage of education?
Yeah, so you hit the nail on the head with something, and again, you are an incredibly knowledgeable individual, and the the research that that you have participated in, and the research that you conduct and whatnot is incredible. However,
Thank you, brother. Yes, but bring
no,
the
no,
simple part.
because no, it has to be recognized, and I see all the certificates behind you and degrees and all that stuff, and that stuff really is important. However, my job is to take all that very, very complex, and educating kids is probably one of the most complex and difficult things that there are, and schools are so complex.
Amen.
I try to simplify it. I simplify it. and I'm gonna give you my secret, right? I'm gonna give you the secret of what I do, what the secret sauce is really in California. We have something that's called the local control and accountability plan. It's basically all of our money's in there. We got to come up with goals. We got to come up with a plan, and it's pretty much rooted in equity. Mm-hmm. So we come up with LCAP goals. And so we have 4 goals, and I'm not going to go over all of them, but I am going to go over goal number 1. But what I do is, these are our goals. This is what we live by. So on the governance team, which is the school board, I made sure that the board and I were on the same page of what our expectations were for the district. What are our goals and hopes? And luckily, I inherited a great board. They are 5 extremely different people, but they want what's best for kids, and they don't just say the line. But this is our number 1 LCAP goal, right? This is goal 1. All students will receive a high quality education in a safe and welcoming environment with equitable high expectations, access to technology, and instruction in the California state standards that prepare them for college and career. That's all I need.
Yeah. Everything
that our students need, and everything that we need in this district, every student from every family is included in that number 1 goal.
Absolutely.
And at every single meeting that I hold, whether it's a board meeting, principal meeting, parent meeting, anything, I flash those goals up, I read them, and that really kicks it off. It's that coherence, right? Because if we all have goals, we all have missions and visions and all that, but if people can't cite them for one, then how are we ever going to implement them? But the first thing is all students, and then the next sentence is we'll receive a high quality education. So what is that? So things that I've done is, I'm not afraid of the outside coming and looking in, right? So in Mount Diablo, I'm going to be open and transparent and tell you, we do not have all the answers, and right. We are a district that is under state assistance. And you know what that means? State assistance means that you are not moving certain kids, right? And you are not moving certain student groups. And so when we get under that state assistance, I don't fight it, and I don't justify it, and I don't resist it. I embrace it. So you want to come in here and you want to assess our programs and what we're doing, and then you want to give us support. I'm open to that. So we did something called a systemic instructional review. And it was done by an organization called the California Collaborative for Educational Excellence. They went into classes, they looked at our board minutes, they looked at our materials, they looked at everything. And what they found was that, yeah, we have pockets of excellence throughout our districts, but there was not a consistent educational program within our district. And you know, if you walk down any hallway in any school throughout America and stuff, you're going to have those classrooms where they're knocking it out the park. You're going to have some other classrooms where it's developing, and you're going to have some other classrooms that aren't there, right? And what they were saying in this review was, we need to get is that coherence. We need to come up really with that educational model, and what are your educational priorities and goals, and then we need to be able to see that in all aspects of your organization. Is it being spoken about at a board meeting? Are the principals talking about it? Are the teachers talking about it? Are parents aware? Are students aware? And so, like, that's not some secret sauce, right? There's no, you don't need to read 20 books to know that, right? Like, you just need to know, like, you know, there's certain things that just have to happen. So what I do as superintendent is I try not to put 20 different programs in front of my teachers.
Right.
And see, and that really comes from my background of understanding exactly what an elementary first grade teacher goes through, exactly what a middle school science teacher goes through, exactly what a high school, you know, AP English teacher or high school algebra 1 teacher goes through. Really understanding that. So as we try to implement initiatives, I got to take that culture and the readiness of the organization. That's my top priority, is what as a culture can we sustain, and can we actually just accept? And again, in education, you know how tough things are. I mean, this is the toughest profession out here, but it's also the most important, and it's also the most rewarding. And I think, and I am speaking hopefully to a group of educators, it is the most important profession that's out there. So what I need to do is not overwhelm our folks with, hey, we're going to do this for 6 months, and then all of a sudden something's going to change, and now we pivoted to this. So it's that consistency. And one thing about me, I'm the most consistent person that there is. Like, you know, I eat the same breakfast every single day, 7 days a week. I mean, I get like, and so when it comes to being consistent on consistently supporting kids, that's what I am. So no matter what I talk about, it's always about supporting kids. And I'm not just talking, I don't just target one group of kids. I'm talking all kids. Okay. And when we start getting in the conversation of equity, when we start getting into the conversation of systemic racism and all those types of things, like, I'm advocating for everybody. And the one group that you know, you haven't mentioned, that I do a lot of work with up and down the state, is students who have individual education programs. Absolutely. Or IEP students, or special education students. And you know, I get challenged all the time. Well, you know, at our school, we only have, you know, so many students in this group and so many students in that group. And I say, okay, well, let me compare your students to your students who are special education students. There's always a gap there, right? And so how do we ensure that our students who have special needs are being successful, right? And so that's the base of my philosophy, right? If we can work with those students, then let's look at the disparity between our socially economically disadvantaged students versus our non-socioeconomic. There's a gap there. Then when you start bringing in homeless and foster youth, and you start looking at the different you know, student ethnicities and things like that, I can't have an administrator that oversees 12 different student groups. I can't have 12 different administrators overseeing 12 different student groups. So if we just had high expectations for all kids, did great instruction and follow through, and you know, common assessments, the PLC model, right? Absolutely. You probably hear from my tone, my life changed the first time I heard Anthony Muhammad speak. When I heard Dr. Anthony Muhammad speak, like that was my awakening, right? And he goes on and on about that, and I could talk about that, but really, what can we just do for all kids, right? And so that's the approach that I bring, and that I really try to instill in my leaders, so that my leaders aren't overwhelming their departments, their schools, you know, the members of their schools. My leaders know, I just need to focus on these few things. Now, as you well know, as a site administrator, you got to know everything. And that's what I tell them. They're all looking at me, and you know how educators are. They want details for everything. And I say, look, you need to know about every single thing at your school. you need to know when the trash is coming. You need to know, what kid is known to run for the fences. You need to know what kid is going to show up there, the first one, the last one, what kid with their reading levels. You should be able to
Relationships.
yeah, just run it down. And so anyway, I have high expectations for that stuff. However, for the extra tight stuff, it's all about, hey, it's all about that instruction. It's all about standards based. I mean, we're doing a huge district-wide focus on math, grade level standards. It sounds simple. People think, oh, grade level standards. Yeah, we're doing that. All of our lessons are of grade level. If you did an audit,
absolutely,
if you went around and did an audit on those grade level standards in every class, you'd be surprised at what you see. That's the work that we're really embracing in right this very second.
That's a heavy lift. That is a heavy lift for any teaching and learning organization, because you're focusing on one element to build capacity, did a comprehensive, probably lesson plan analysis based off of the rigor, and is instruction really reaching that level of rigor that is anticipated? Let's go back to the basics. But I'm glad you brought up our different student groups. And when I talk about our student groups in the context of our special population students, because just this morning, I had a really, really, really good Zoom meeting with Carla Phillips Caricabas, right? And she's on the State Board of Education for Arizona. And also she had worked under the Jeb Bush administration, right? And her biggest advocacy, right? Carla's biggest advocacy has always been about having that equity within the special group population, right? Or special groups with special education students. Really, really huge advocacy with her work. So anybody that is out there, that are listeners, please check out her work, her blogs and everything, working with Getting Smart with Tom Vander Ark as well. But you are absolutely right, Dr. Clark. That is essential that when we look at all, segues into our next question. This is just going to be a very simple question for you, because I want you, this is now loosely coupled. I'm just going to say the question and you just take it to that next level, right? What does a leadership disposition look like in the context of excellence and equity to ensure all families, all students have those necessary conditions to be successful?
We need to be able to engage with our families and meet them where they are. And again, I mean, that's really where it comes from. We are a disproportionate district. We're disproportionate for our African American students. We're disproportionate for our homeless students, and we're disproportionate in our foster youth. And that disproportionate goes in many different categories. And so as we look to engage and to make sure that we're engaging with our communities, our leaders, right, we have to give them support, right? So we've gone through, all of our leaders going through equity training, however you want to couple that, right? Implicit bias training, looking at your own story, telling your story, how your name came about, how you were raised, things like that, and really trying to get our administrators to understand, regardless of where a family is coming from, you need to be able to meet them there, and they need to be able to feel that, right? Because that partnership between school and home, I mean, that is, that's 90%. That's 90% of the work that needs to happen. And so that is that expectation that we are going to do this, but also we're going to make mistakes. There's going to be problems. There's going to be things that don't work out as we have them planned. And you have to have some, you have to have some forgiveness in that process, right? If a principal is trying, can
I interject,
yeah.
Dr. Clark, because you said one word I just want to be able to, because that's a mega theme for me. I just want you to elaborate, because a lot of leaders, it's hard for leaders to actually say that, right? Give other leaders a level of forgiveness, please. Just really fast. I know you're going into the answer.
No, that's perfect. So again, I set the tone myself and the school board with with really putting our and I do a lot of talking about site leaders, but I'm also talking about my assistant superintendents, directors, things like that. I want them to lead, and I want them to be innovative, and I want them to try new things. Now, I'm setting the expectation. The expectation is that whatever it is, right? All students will receive high quality, safe, welcoming, parents engaged. That's the expectation. How you go about doing that, that's where I'm going to let you lead. And you know your communities, you know your system, and as long as you aren't just giving me excuses why it's not happening. But if you try something and say it doesn't go well and it blows up, I can't be there the next day breathing down your neck, lecturing you and dressing you down for something like that. I need to sit back and say, hey, I get it. I appreciate the fact that you put your neck out there. I appreciate the fact that you tried to do this. Tell me why you think this didn't work, and I'll give some some encouragement there, and I'll give some feedback or whatnot. But that spreads amongst the culture, and then and now you don't have people, because when I came into this district, it had been a top-down district throughout its history. And when I came in and started unleashing that, putting that leadership on my folks, they froze. They were hesitant to step out there on their own, seeing how I was going to react. And so that has had to happen, where I'm constantly, encouraging people to take risks, to try things, and I'm going to have their back. Now we have to follow the law. We have to do what's right. If we're doing something that's best for kids and best for families and best for our folks, then hey, I got to support it. But that's what some leaders have a hard time doing, right? Because, hey, I want us to go 0 to 60 right now. I want us there now. But I know that doesn't work, right? That's not practical in this world. We're too complex. There's too many challenges. So as long as I can just provide that support, and I have the experience to be able to empathize with what they're going through.
Absolutely.
Right? Because of my past experiences. So yeah, no, you hit it right on the head, is that you got to let your leaders try stuff, as long as they're staying within the confines of the law, making sure it's legal, making sure that we're not doing things that are cruel to kids. Discipline policies, things like that, homework policies, grading policies, and stuff like that. Like what's best for kids? That's the ultimate question. Was this good for kids? Not, and again, I say it all the time. I'm not looking to make the lives of our adults. I'm not just looking to make their jobs easy. It's not an easy job. And if it's easy just to suspend a kid, or to bench a kid at recess, or to push a kid into a different program or something like that, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to do what's right by our students. And that's how you create that culture of excellence. That's how it starts happening. And again, it's just like growing a garden. You plant it, you do all that stuff, you expect that stuff to grow right away. Maybe if you're growing tomato plants or something, they grow pretty quick. But it takes time for things to grow and to develop and bear fruit, and then have to be redone, right, with the seasons and things like that. So, man, you got me all fired up here.
That's why I said I'm letting you go on this. This is a loosely coupled answer. That's why I'm saying just go ahead with that. I'm not giving no confines right here, or putting a construct on that. Let my listeners learn. Yes.
But what it all comes down to is, because what I want is, if the principals can do it, then the teachers can do it. Like, absolutely. I want teachers to say, hey, class, here's your assignment. Here goes the standards or the concepts that I want you to do. How you develop it is up to you. But here go your tools. You got your Chromebook. You got this. You have that. You can do it. And that's what I want. And if our principals are all locked up and only can see things in a particular box, then that's how our teachers are going to be. And then that's the environment that our students are going to be in. And so it's all intentional to get down to the students. It's all intentional.
One word I want to say: culture, right? And that's how you established that culture of risk, but more importantly, you established a culture of trust with the leadership, right? And one point I want to bring up is what you were saying, right? This job is hard, and we need to recognize the complexities of it, but you got to love the kids a little bit more than the adults. And that's the theme that I got from you. But this is the only constraint, or I should say constraint, that you are going to face is this last question, brother. Now, this is tightly coupled.
Yeah.
Keep you like this, okay? I want to see how Adam Clark replies to this, right? In only 3 words, Dr. Clark, only 3 words, right? We are celebrating Black History Month, right? This is the Black Excellence series where, we're really focusing on intentional and bold transformation and leadership practices in the AC stage of education. But what 3 words should our participants always adhere to when we reflect on how we can create better spaces, everything that we talked about today, right? Better spaces for all, underpinning this intentionality and boldness regarding meaningful and sustainable systems where high quality instruction is noted everywhere. There's not a pocket of excellence. There is an organization of excellence. So what 3 words do you want our listeners to leave with today?
Yeah, so usually, I mean, if this, we've been talking for almost an hour here, so I can't do anything in 3 words, but I will follow the dialogue. But I'll give you 3 words, and then I'll add a little dialogue to it. But the 3 words that I would really think would be expectations, and then dialogue, and then commitment. And really where we are, it's all about those expectations. What do we as the adults expect from our kids, from our communities, from our employees, from the system? What do we expect? And then we got to have dialogue, and you can put a fancy word like collaboration and all that type of stuff, but you got to talk it out, right? You got to be able to talk and
That's 4 words, Dr. Clark.
No, I got expectations, dialogue, and commitment.
You had a collaboration in there. I'm
saying dialogue and collaboration are the same thing. That's the point I was trying to make.
Synonyms.
And then like and then commitment, right? You got to be committed. You got to be committed to the work. You got to be committed to the process. You got to be committed to the cause or whatever. And again, you can be the lunch person, right? And like kids feel that like. Again, I'm still just concentrating on those 3 words.
Yes.
But if you're committed to change, and if you're going to bring in a program or a change philosophy, and you're only talking to the teachers, or you're only talking to the principals, and you're not talking to the lunch people, you're not talking to the yard supervisors, you're not talking to the instructional aides, you're not talking to the board. I mean, that's that commitment. You got to be committed to do the work, and that is you got to bring everyone along, and you got to keep going. Like I said, I mean, this has been a long journey for me. This has been, I mean, I started off as a seasonal summer camp counselor. That's all the way up to superintendent. I've done everything. I was committed to the process, and so you got to do the work. That commitment is that's a non-negotiable.
And that exudes you, Dr. Clark, because when I think of you, expectations, you have the hard conversations, that continuous dialogue, and no one can ever question your unwavering commitment for all. And Dr. Clark, it is such an honor to have you on Voices for Excellence, the Black Excellence series. I'm sure I'm going to see you around. I'll be out in California a few times. Brother, I'm looking to collaborate with you. It's just going to be absolutely amazing what we're doing for all of students. So like I said, my brother, my friend, my colleague, thank you, Dr. Clark. Free Mr. Clark. Free Mr. Clark.
It truly has been a pleasure, and I appreciate you creating this space. I didn't, I talked about so many other things. I didn't go into the, our African American Student Achievement Department and program. I didn't go into our Focal Scholar program. I didn't talk about the HBCU fair that we had at one of our high schools yesterday. I didn't talk about all that stuff, but you just got to know that we're doing things for all kids, and it's reflective in the work. But I appreciate the work that you're doing. You're getting out there, and you're bringing a focus to this very complex work, right? And I know you got a lot of knowledge there. You got a lot of experience, and you just got to keep bringing people together and talking about this stuff. And this platform, this podcast, this is just one of those things, and I'm so fortunate and thrilled and honored that I would even be, listed upon all the great leaders that you've had on this podcast. So thank you for your work, and thank you, for your expectation, your dialogue, and your commitment to the cause. So thank you very much, Dr. Connor.
Listen, you gave me a mic drop on my own show. So on that note, everybody, I'm not saying no more. Onward and upward, everybody. Have a great day. Happy Black History Month.